How's it going, guys? My name's Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. As I've been covering all the references, Easter eggs, and secrets in the Henry Stickmin series, people have obviously been asking me to cover Innersloth's other game, Among Us, and I decided to wait until the Airship map was officially released. Now that that's here, we have all sorts to get into. First off, rather conceptually, the game is clearly influenced by John Carpenter's iconic movie, The Thing, a movie masterpiece where an alien creature can shapeshift to imitate any person. It then twists itself in hideous ways to slowly kill the characters of their remote outpost, all the while sabotaging things in order to protect itself and not get caught. The theme song for Among Us was unmistakably influenced by John Carpenter's soundtrack, and the main poster for the game is also an homage to the poster for The Thing, with the backlit, window-faced being standing in the forefront, obviously with a few more characters added in. This spike that shoots out of the imposter's mouth doesn't appear to be anything exactly. Puff claims he wasn't intending a specific reference. It's a little bit xenomorph and a little bit this specific kill from The Thing, but it isn't quite either. Among Us is noteworthy for being an indie passion project, something that didn't catch on and reach its full potential until 2 years after its release. The Scrabdackle Kickstarter is live now. This is a game that is officially funded, has now smashed 2 of its stretch goals, and is well on way to becoming the best it could. Please don't let Scrabdackle have to wait 2 years to be discovered. I'll give you more of a sales pitch at the end of the video. I'm going to make my way through more direct, in-game references one map at a time. I'm actually going to start with the Airship since it's the newest and I imagine is therefore of the most interest to most of you, but I'll make sure to have timestamps for each of the different maps, and I'll cover the rest of them in the order they were originally released. So, the Airship. This first one is a doozy, and may not go noticed by most players, reserved for the hardcore elite fans. But the Airship itself is in fact a reference to the Airship. Okay, really, there are going to be a lot of references to the Henry Stickmin series here, and most of the things that are references outside of the Stickmin series are done so in a way that were first referenced through Henry Stickmin, so there's weird layers to that. I think a cool way to start would be simply with a tour comparing equivalent rooms, and mapping out both to show where there's a few key differences. I'll map this out by following Henry through several different routes. He can drop down through a hatch on top of the airship and drop down next to the meeting room. He sneaks his way across there into this little side room. From there he can jump down a trash chute and lands on the left side of the gap room. Once across is a doorway leading to the records room. On the far side of this room, off to the right, a doorway that we never actually see the other side of, and a vent are seen on the right-hand side of that room, which actually matches with a vent placement in the Airship Among Us map. That's something that wouldn't have been planned way back when, but it's a really cool attention to detail here. So with Henry sneaking through that duct, he would have went around the lounge, instead popping out directly in the cargo bay. In lightning quick larcenist, he busts straight into the cargo bay and then leaves again, so there's nothing new there. Henry can instead smash his way into the cockpit, chasing Reginald left to right, leading into the engine room with the big crane and all. It does end up skipping this little hallway that has access points for communications and the armory. Beyond that, he's chased through these main halls, although we never really know which room is which, except for that big old sword secret, which I'll speak more on later. And we also learn that the dark room for developing photos branches off of this main hall. This is the first main difference in layout. Henry pops out in the brig, whereas in Among Us, now it has the showers. Reginald escapes up top, Henry fights the right-hand man along this bridge, something that doesn't appear to be in Among Us at all. It instead skips straight to this 2-tier ventilation room, which again connects to the cargo bay as we would expect. Henry can also gain access from the outside, making his way in through this outdoor walkway, used in Among Us as a location to try and pick up adequate cell phone signals. Entering through here places Henry in the security room, although his access is a little different, coming from a door off to the right. We don't really know what surrounds this, as Henry again enters a vent, which shoots him out in the same place it did before. But on this journey, he passes by the vault and ends up in the gap room. This could technically all still make sense layout-wise. It would just require a rather long loop around to connect back up here. Now this is a bit of broken continuity in the Stickmin game. As we enter the doorway on this left-hand side, Henry pops out in the brig again. Same as it is in Among Us. We know that with these cell numbers and Dave Pampa being locked up, it's meant to be the same room. But in Henry, it ends up both before the vault and at the end of the main hall. So that's been corrected here in this airship. It's now just the one canonic location. Beyond the brig is the vault, as we would expect. Henry walks out to the left into this particular hallway, now shown in Among Us to exist between the security and kitchen. The vault now only has the one way in and out, which really does make more sense security-wise. That's all we get from infiltrating the airship. Jumping ahead to completing the mission, a couple routes have more of this airship. In Top-At Civil Warfare, Ellie outs Henry as being a bit sleazy and abandoning her at the wall. Henry is walked out on the plank with everyone watching from the viewing deck. We kind of jump ahead to here in the Stickmin series. In Among Us, it's shown to be situated right next to the kitchen. Henry and his companions eventually make their way off the airship using an escape pod, although we're never shown where on the ship that would be. It's likely that it's the same escape pod Henry took during a fail in that meeting room in infiltrating the airship. These are all the different locations along the airship that were shown through the Stickmin series. One continuity error, this bridge that never made its way into Among Us, and several new locations never seen in the Stickmin series, which would be communications, the armory, kitchen, electrical, medical, showers, and lounge. Now looking at the actual references. They heard you liked Among Us, so they put some Among Us in Among Us. The pencil found in the gap room between the records and the brig is the magic pencil, found in the same location Henry would have used it. Either he's been here and he left it behind, or it's an item that the Top-Ats had and left laying around for him to use. Something that was only featured in the trailer but is not actually present in-game would be this little helicopter off in the distance outside the window, a reference to Henry's good pal and inventor of great plans, Charles. The vault contains most of the same references as it did in the Henry Stickmin collection. These paintings are pretty well the same, although as with other things throughout this map, they've now been crew-mated instead of simply being Stickmins. These basic squares and lines, a style made famous by Mondrain, they exist on either side. Van Gogh's Starry Night, what kind of looks to be like a world map, although it's not really Earth, is it? The Final Destination map from Super Smash Bros., the Mona Lisa, something that reminds me of the default background from Windows XP, although the way it's stretched out, I'm less certain about that here than I was during the Stickmin collection. We have the long cat meme, although this one is like a weird alien green long cat instead of the usual white. Maybe it's an imposter long cat. The derp scout face meme from Team Fortress 2, and the famous American Gothic painting. The Romanian ruby is still at the center of the vault. Either Henry hasn't stolen it yet, or this takes place in a timeline where Henry did not go rogue and steal the ruby. Really, I'll just stop speculating on timelines and such, as that has potential for a video all of its own. Maybe no lore was intended, and it's just meant to be fun references. We have the energy sword from the Halo series, although in this game it is instead the infected Bloodblade energy sword variant. We still have the golden gun from the N64 game 007 GoldenEye. Our new crewmate style mannequins have the same golden top hat, purple jacket, and stout shako hat seen in the Stickmin vault. I don't believe we ever see a Stickmin character that actually has a gold top hat, and I never figured out what that purple jacket is from, but the stout shako is a reference to a hat for the soldier in Team Fortress 2, a series Puffballs references very frequently. Discarded in the corner is the claw pack, which is similar to Banjo's blue backpack with a mechanized kazooie inside. This was a failed option in the pure-blooded thief route. There's a task in the vault that involves dressing this blank mannequin. The different hats are things that exist directly in this game, whether that be in the vault or other cosmetics. But several things are totally new. I'm suspicious that I've seen this pink tank top and jean short shorts paired together in some cartoon. I'm totally stumped on that one, but it's driving me crazy. The pixelated sunglasses would be those from the Deal With It meme. The eye patch, who knows, Nick Fury, Demo Man, anything like that. What's most likely is that it's intended to be the same eye patch that we see stashed in the vault of the Top-At's orbital station. That doesn't explain where they come from. It could have been from this old Top-At leader being held as some monument to their legacy, but it's never really explained in-game. And these red triangle sunglasses, while a semi-common thing, a bit of a trope, especially in anime, it's most famously worn by Kamina from Gurren Lagann, but it could also possibly be Teddy from the Mother series, especially if it were to be paired with the pompadour hat option. It's hard to know who Puff might have had in mind with precisely here. They're just that one hair too generic. In the brig, we can see a discarded wizard's hat, the one that Henry would have worn when attempting to bust down this door. I wonder if Dave Pampa is still stuck in J13. There's nothing that indicates one way or the other. We have a bit of a Schrodinger's stick going on here. Between the kitchen and security are 4 portraits, which are crewified versions of the previous Top Hat leader portraits previously seen on a wall in this order in Infiltrating the Airship. There is Trunk, TRNK, Billy G, Sir Wilford IV, and Terrence Suave. Billy G as a name is itself a reference to Michael Jackson's hit song Billie Jean, although here his goatee looks a little bit more like one of those cartoon cat faces. How cute. In the armory, we have multiple Top Hat specific weapons. The golden cannon that the Top Hat members are seen arguing over.
No, we can't do that. Why not, man? You do realize how much a solid gold cannon would weigh, don't you? Phew, we totally got enough power. What do you think, man?
We saw that they eventually had this cannon on their orbital station, but I suppose they eventually picked one up sometime between the airship and then. We have a pair of golden pistols seen in Henry's stash at the end of Cleaned 'Em Out. Something that I believe Puff has confirmed is meant to be a subtle nod to the twin golden pistols of Killer Bean. The design was just altered and made less obvious. This peculiar looking gun is something used by Mr. Macbeth in completing the mission during his Undertale themed battle. We have a trio of these little laser guns on the wall. I don't know quite what they are or where they're from. I don't think we ever saw these in the Stickmin collection. Down to the side here, we have a big sledgehammer, one that we can assume would belong to Top Hat member Sledge McRush. There is also a wall with a set of weapons meant to reference those of the 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Left to right is Michelangelo's nunchucks, Raphael's twin sais, Leonardo's katana, and Donatello's bow staff. The meeting room up top has this little round mug with a Top Hat logo on it. This is similar to one we see a Top Hat member using during a meeting in this room on the airship. I said it back in my Stickmin video, and I'll say it again. I want a version of this mug. I hope Innersloth adds it to their stores. Round shape and everything. This small room just outside of that area has a discarded bottle of white glue, which Henry would have applied in an attempt to stealthily climb over the top of the Top Hat members. In the medical, on the waiting room area counter, there's another one of those red mugs. The magazine directly next to it is Choo Choo magazine that we've seen Mr. Macbeth reading, but this other one discarded in the corner, I have no idea. I don't remember seeing that anywhere in the Stickmin series. We have a poster on the wall, maybe it's meant to be an X-ray, which is simply a singular bone. This is meant to reference the iconic bone that is left sticking out of a murdered crewmate. There's been plenty of memes about the simplicity of crewmate anatomy, and if that's truly all that there is, then I guess this single bone is actually a picture of an entire crewmate's skeleton. While not quite the same shape, this green hammer used to repair the showers looks very similar to those used when Henry is standing on top of the Top Hat orbital station. Security has a few notable things recreated from the Stickmin collection. The big multi-monitor computer station returns, still featuring the Top Hat clan logo screensaver bouncing around the screen like it would in old school DVD screens. It's a whole nostalgic thing about waiting for this bouncing icon to hit an exact corner. This version of it hits the corner 2/3 of the time. Takes some of the magic out of it, honestly. It also has an open book with a key laid across it. Not something you can interact with here, but an important step in the big old sword puzzle in Henry Stickmin. And while you can't actually execute this puzzle and gain a massive sword, although that would be really fun, we still have that dropped USB on the ground of the vault along with the fallen roof panel, the keypad outside of that meeting room, and the eventual Zelda-like chest just off the main hall where the sword is eventually found. The main hall has several little rooms that branch off, one of which contains a pair of over-ear headphones. Many might assume this is a reference to Charles Calvin, but with the faded, orangey tone, they would instead be the headphones of Bert Curtis, seen manning a command post within the orbital station. While he was never seen in Infiltrating the Airship, this isn't a room we ever went inside of during that game. This could indicate that he served a role on the airship before being transferred to the rocket. There is also the dark room in which poor Alcohol had his pictures ruined when power was rerouted. Outside of the room, on the floor here, we see a spilled can of beans. Spilling the beans is a phrase in and of itself, but they specifically come from Henry chasing Reginald down this main hall. He chugs the beans like Popeye and tosses them aside. I really hope that this stray can of beans in some way is the source of Beans the Top Hat member. Maybe they saw this event take place and they were just so flabbergasted by these rocket-propelling beans. He's still thinking about those beans. It became his entire identity. Or maybe this can of beans was his lunch. Henry stole it and he named himself Beans as one giant revenge arc. Ultimate game theory wrap-up discovery. I don't know, I just don't know what the joke is with Beans the character. There is a fair amount going on in the cargo hold. A tank in a box. While not actually seen in this game, we know from the Henry Stickmin collection that it is the white tank of the Newgrounds logo. Tucked next to it here is a banana bomb. During government-supported private investigator, Charles launches the banana bomb into the cargo hold to take out the Top Hats, and instead brings down the whole ship. The banana bomb itself is a reference to a weapon in the Worms franchise. We have the large golden safe shown in the lightning-quick larcenist ending of infiltrating the airship. There is a task with this vault that involves cracking it, yet we never get to see what's inside. Luckily, through Henry, we have an answer to that. Yet at the same time, we have no answer. Why is there a teddy bear? It's a very unsatisfying conclusion. Henry stole this safe in that ending by attaching a ball and chain to the safe and throwing it out of the airship. We can see that ball and chain attached here. There is a box of top hats, ranked class 4 through 7. Interesting to know that the hats serve a purpose for distinguishing rank within the clan. In infiltrating the airship, we saw the other corner of the cargo bay here, with top hats class 1 to 3. That gives us an approximate scale of how many ranks there are within this clan. There are top hats scattered all around. Something easy like this stack of 3 would have been those seen belonging to Sir Wilfrid IV. All the rest of them are a little too generic to assign to a specific character. The ventilation task has these 2 tiers and requires memorizing a 4-image sequence using key pieces of top hat loot. The Tunisian diamond, Romanian ruby, Norwegian emerald, and this giant big Mario-style gold coin. A new possible kill animation from the airship is this one of a right-hand man style hyper beam, something he specifically used on Henry and his followers when selecting the good gents as an option in Top Hat Civil Warfare.
Henry's still the leader.
I've had enough of this!
The way an imposter crewmate is dropped from the airship when ejected with their hand outstretched is meant to reference the way Reginald dropped Henry and the resulting slow-mo fall of the betrayed ending. While being airship-oriented, it was in fleeing the complex. With the airship done, I'm going to work through the rest in the order of their release, and I think in each map I have something new to share that you've maybe not seen in other videos. I'll at least do my best to keep it fresh and unique. First up is the Skeld, which has a weird anachronistic setting. There are these old giant computer towers and recording setups, ham radios, VHS tapes, dial-up internet sounds. Telegraph communication, but also big flat screen monitors, and also an entire spaceship with big pulsing sci-fi engines. It all seems really at odds. I imagine there's some really cool theorizing to be done there. In the storage section, this is full of trash, but more than that, we also have the teleporter, a recurring item in every episode of the Henry Stickmin series, which actually dates back one step further to Puffballs United's original animation, Crossing the Pit, that kind of kicked off the whole Henry Stickmin series, without itself being a canon entry. It's actually cracked, which may have occurred when Henry threw it on the ground in completing the mission. I kind of have a concept for a video that tries to establish a Henry Stickmin and Among Us timeline. It's in the works. I think it could be really cool. Also bouncing around in the storage is the Tunisian diamond from Henry Stickmin's Stealing the Diamond. In early builds of the game, there was this golden eagle-like totem. It's unclear if that was from anything, but it's now been swapped out to a reference from Innersloth's in hiatus game Dietide. The exact same statue is also seen in Henry Stickmin's Completing the Mission rocket. It's unknown if they plan to return to that project. Obviously, Among Us is their focus. The trash chute outside the meeting room again has the Dietide statue, Tunisian diamond, and teleporter. Over in the communications section, if you stand around, you can hear a cycling Morse code. Now normally Morse has these short and long beeps with slight separations in between them so you can break apart different letters, words, and phrases. This one has no spaces, except for a noticeable gap when the loop starts over. Without those spaces, there are near infinite combinations of what this could be. Using a program that lets you branch out and try to find actual words one step at a time through trial and error, there is one particular thing that was found, and I really am going to assume this is not what they were going for. The secret, I'm thinking, is yet to be cracked. We also have a set of green over-ear headphones like the ones worn by Quentin Alabaster. We can move on to the Mira HQ, which is assumed to be an acronym of some sort, or at least an initialism. M Interplanetary Research Administration? Mobile? Something like that? I'm curious if as the game expands further, that sort of lore will become more built out. In the cafeteria, the vending machine has a Gatorade-like NRG drink. You know, an energy drink. This was first featured back in Escaping the Prison. It's unclear the order these were worked on. There was clearly overlap in the development of the Henry Stickmin collection and Among Us. The product obviously comes from Henry Stickmin, and it's unclear the timing of this redesign, but I think it would have worked out that even though it was made for the Henry Stickmin collection first, Among Us would have released before that, and so in a weird roundabout way, Henry Stickmin is referencing Among Us, who is referencing Henry Stickmin. And yes, the NRG drink is a real drink, but I don't think that was a reference. That's just a bit of a coincidence. There's also Dawn Dew, a Mountain Dew parody branding, also seen in the epic gamer moment of Ellie and Henry's attempted escape from the wall and fleeing the complex. We also have Sea Sir, which appears to be some sort of canned coffee beverage. Maybe it's meant to be read like Caesar. The green logo is maybe meant to be a play on Starbucks. This seems so reference adjacent, but I can't pin down anything specific. Over in the office, with this particular desk arrangement being somewhat perpendicular to each other and one having an exercise ball, sure, that's something people do in any old office, but I think it might be a reference to this cold open from the American version of The Office when Dwight has started sitting at his desk on an exercise ball. There's a big Henry Stickmin collection poster at the back here. This confuses things a bit. Is Henry a game within Among Us? Is Among Us a game within Henry? Are neither of them games? Why would there be a poster for the Henry Stickmin collection? That's a tough one. If you zoom way in on the two different things open on this computer, people have frequently cited this as being a game of Mario. I think that's something that one person just happened to say, and then everyone else after just kind of repeated it. I don't see it at all. Am I crazy? I think it's much more clearly a copy of Adobe Flash, now known as Adobe Animate, and I guess that might not be apparent to people who don't work in Flash, but for anyone who doesn't know, this would have been the program used to make all the art for Henry Stickmin and Among Us. And the other one I assume is Discord, although I'm a little less confident on that. Between the green highlights around the screen and what appears to be album art in the bottom left, it might also be Spotify. But yeah, listening to some tunes while you do a bit of animating. During the upload task, there's a bunch of random text flashing at the bottom. I wanted to check if there was anything particularly goofy. It seems to be randomly generated based on 3 parts. It'll be that first string _ second dot file type. It always starts with file.txt and is randomized after that. The first section can be one internet, among is, danger, dirt, happy birthday, important, life, lifeform, look at this, minerals, mining, pineapple, rocks, soil, specimen, what? The second part can be data, finances, growth, investigation, report, results, and serious biz. With the possible extensions, CSV, DAT, doc, doof, dot, file, JPEG, Mira, PNG, RAW, space, TIFF, text, and XSL. As I mentioned with the Skeld, if you hang out around here, you get to hear some old school dial-up internet connections. Which again, just is really strange for this sophisticated space station. When selecting the watering can off this shelf, the associated text is watering can get. It's likely a reference to Shine Get in Super Mario Sunshine. This awkward grammar resulted from a poor translation of the Japanese version. International versions instead simply say shine, but that janky English stuck around and has become a common gamer inside joke. For example, when earning medals on Newgrounds, it comes with a medal get prompt. This one plant at the greenhouse may be a Korok from Breath of the Wild. Yeah, haha, you found me. Puff has referenced this before in Henry Stickmin, so it's not unlikely. In the laboratory, during the sort samples task, this fossil flower might have come from Innersloth's first free online game, Dig to China. But fossilized ferns are just kind of a common thing. This is another one of those instances where I think everyone is just kind of parroting that first person who said it. It's not like fossilized ferns aren't a thing in the real world, so I'm a little doubtful on this one. Now looking at the Polus map, which itself was very directly referenced in Henry Stickmin, joking that this entire planet was actually named after one character who won a contest. And if we're assuming that it's true that these worlds are connected, yeah, that might actually be where this planet's name came from. We have the See Something, Say Something poster, which is also seen in Henry Stickmin's Completing the Mission. As a phrase, this was first trademarked by the New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority and is licensed to the US Department of Homeland Security. Among Us frequently references Henry, and Henry has a handful of references to Among Us. Something this specific is really one of the main things that has people assuming these take place in the same universe. Normally I'd say a plate of donuts is a plate of donuts, how can that really be a reference? But the fact that it plays such a specific role in an achievement in escaping the prison means it could be an intentional tie-in. Just outside of this office, we have a small little poster that has part of Henry's face. Vitals features a Simsong brand screen, which also would have originated in Stealing the Diamond. It's obviously a riff on Samsung, but The Simpsons actually had a really similar joke back in Season 7's Scenes from the Class Struggle of having goofed up brand names for TVs.
I know a genuine Panaphonics when I see it, and look, there's Magnetbox and Sorny.
So I believe Simsong, in yellow writing and a somewhat similar font, is meant to simultaneously be a parody of Samsung and a shout out to that Simpsons joke. I love that in so many ways. Since I hadn't introduced it yet, Simsong and Bell as brands return again, both in the security room. Bell on the big monitors, Simsong on the tape recorder. Similarly, in the communications of the airship, you once again hear those dial-up sounds. It's common across any of these communication rooms. Also in the corner is Y2K 404, referencing the Y2K panic as well as 404 errors. Maybe this is an alternate reality where Y2K actually happened? When midnight struck with the new millennium, all our computers reset and were fried, and now the Among Us universe is stuck using all this outdated technology? I haven't given it a ton of thought yet, but right now that's my best guess. The security task features a Bell screen with a play on the Dell logo. The funny thing is that Bell Mobility is a real thing in Canada, but it doesn't look like this. The computer has a QR code, which opens up a simple message, "Yo Holmes, smell you later," which of all the random things is a line from Will Smith's theme song for The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The different weather nodes are named after the possible endings from Henry Stickmin's Fleeing the Complex. Ghost Inmate, International Rescue Operative, The Betrayed, Presumed Dead, and Convict Allies, as well as one more for Major League Gaming, which is its own thing, which would have itself also had a major reference in Fleeing the Complex. In the specimen room, with store artifacts, one of the items to place in the cooler is again the Tunisian diamond. The purple gem is the same as one seen in Mira HQ's Assemble artifact. Looking back, you can even see that that one is cracked. There might actually be a sequence to these maps, a specific continuity playing out. That'll be very helpful if I eventually make that timeline video. The file name for the skull is a hidden Undertale reference. Within the game files, it's titled Panel Specimen Undertale Sans, which in its own way is this extra big payoff and reference, as Undertale is somewhat famous for hiding details in the game files like this. One of the canisters in the middle of the room has a floating top hat like the Top Hat clan from the Henry Stickmin series. The dropship has a keyring that features a Futurama brain slug. Killing the imposter on this map has them bob and sink into the lava, giving a thumbs up on the way down in direct reference to Terminator 2. This only happens with the imposter, which makes sense, since the Terminator is a killer robot disguised as a human. He, in his own way, was an imposter in that universe. A regular crewmate sinks with their hand open. Outside the decontamination walkway is a snowy patch, with some little snow crewmates, who seemingly caught the imposter, or found the remains of their dirty work. It just kind of reminds me of the running joke of Calvin's morbid snowman scenes in Calvin and Hobbes. Within the laboratory, there is a hidden white crewmate barely visible behind the bathroom stall. Admin has a screen with the old iconic DVD screensaver bouncing around the edges and changing colors along the way. That covers each of the different maps. There's a few other broad things in the game we can still talk about. A quick interruption before moving into hats, pets, skins, and some extras. Scrabdackle is live on Kickstarter now. It's a non-linear, open game about exploration, about a wizard's first adventure. Explore the world in whatever path you choose, discover loads of secrets along the way, solve puzzles around the world, use and unlock new skills to take part in crazy boss showdowns, as well as using those skills to access new parts of the world. This game is all about player freedom. There's these silly mechanics like being able to walk away from a conversation at any time, with some characters reacting and getting quite sore with you if you do, plus mini-games, loads of character variety, and kooky weirdness to discover along the way. There's 2 weeks left in the Kickstarter, and the developer Jake Friend just dropped a special new update with an entirely new boss fight to show off. This game is going to be something special. Absolutely check that out. There'll be a link in the description and the pinned comments. And yes, this has been the character's name in the footage. You know, Scrabdackle, Scrabdackle. It's one character shy, fitting the whole thing in there. Among Us has loads of skins and cosmetic items, providing plenty of other opportunities to squeeze in additional references. The base game has a very simple assortment, with most everything being generic, like the astronaut or doctor, with the one exception being a guard from Henry Stickmin's wall. The Polus skin pack included archaeologist, which looks a lot like Indiana Jones's typical outfit. Paired with that was also the archaeologist's hat, although some seem torn with this one. Pairing with that skin, it seems most obviously Indiana Jones, but without being able to see that distinct band around the middle, the frozen appearance, some think it might instead be MacReady's hat from The Thing. Not unreasonable considering all the other tie-ins, and while I'd love to see that, I think it's too small. It's lacking that upward turned front brim and the large strap around the chin. I think it's more likely Indiana Jones. The Airship is set to include the CCC skin for the Center for Chaos Containment from the Stickmin series. And there's a CCC hat that would also pair with that, as well as a prisoner skin, which could be meant for either those locked up at the Red Mesa Penitentiary or those held at the wall. It's hard to really tell since characters in that series don't typically have visible outfits. Similarly, I have to question things like the policeman's outfit or the general's uniform. I don't know if those are meant to reference escaping the prison or the military arm of the Stickmin series. That might just be how Puff draws these particular things. And Right Hand Man Reborn for the cyborgified version of Right Hand Man seen in completing the mission. The Mira security guard skin and hat paired together somewhat resemble London Underground workers, with an inverse coloring of their typical logo. Unsure if that's on purpose, not really a reference, could have been a design influence. Hats. There are so many hats, which especially makes sense since Puff is obviously a huge Team Fortress 2 fan. There are 3 hats in the game files that have remained unavailable in-game. The drinking hat, traffic cone, and pot hat. The last one is a reference to Innersloth's first game, the Flash-based Dig to China. It's unclear why none of these have been released. The Brain Slug has the same name and design as those seen in Futurama. The Bush Hat could be generic, but knowing Puffball's love for Team Fortress 2, it's likely meant to be indirectly the sniper from that game. The Top Hat could be that of any generic low-ranking Top Hat clan member, while the Double Top Hat is a distinct style worn by Top Hat clan leader Reginald Copperbottom. We also have this Top Hat clan leader hat, which is a style worn by Henry during Rapidly Promoted Executive. He takes one of Reginald's hats and his gold chain, wearing it wrapped around the top hat instead. The Towel Wizard is a bunched up towel worn by Gastro in Fleeing the Complex. Calling them a towel wizard is rather polite, considering they were essentially a poop wizard. The Ushanka is a common piece of Russian headwear, but this one in particular features the logo for the wall. There is also the even less mistakable wall guard cap. The eyebrows are a reference to the distinct way that Henry Stickmin character eyebrows are left free floating, somewhat detached from their faces. You can literally place Henry on your head. Pretty unmistakable reference there. The elf cap seems to be a rather copyright-safe workaround for having a Link hat unofficially in-game. The eyeball lamp reminds me of the Yorp aliens from Commander Keen. The fact that it's alien lamp rather than simply alien eye or something closer to that makes me think this is something more specific. The Mira landing headset is similar in style to that belonging to Charles Calvin in the Stickmin series. Does this in some way imply that Mira is an arm of the government? Interesting. The flamingo hat and cat head do not appear to be references, but strangely their eyes will become X's when the wearer is killed by an imposter. I don't think I want an answer to that question. I don't know if this one was intentional, but the Batwing hat looks so much like this particular helmet that came with old Lego sets. But it's unlikely, with it missing the, literal helmet component. The hockey mask could be that worn by Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th series. This is especially likely considering it was released alongside other Halloween-themed hats. The only thing I could possibly think it might be instead is a bit of an indirect workaround, referencing the time Henry threw on a hockey mask while fighting Right-Hand Man. Which that, I think, was meant to be a bit of a combo Jason and Final Fantasy reference. That's overly complicated. It's probably more of a straight line reference to Jason. There are potential layers to the black bandana. It's easy to link it to Metal Gear and Solid Snake, which itself was referenced already in the Stickmin series with John Pilkson, so it could be either of those. But back in the day, several of the Stickmin Flash games were sponsored by Stick Page, whose mascot, Crazy J, would sport a similar black headband. That design of Crazy J was even seen in the intros of some of those Flash games. The pompadour, rather broadly, was a hairstyle of the 50s and 60s made famous by rock and roll icons like Johnny Cash and especially Elvis. The hunter hat is likely meant to be Elmer Fudd. Mysterious Vagabond is a mask worn by Henry during several completing the mission openings taking place after Presumed Dead. Some think Henry was referencing Among Us here because that came out first, but keep in mind these games were in development at the same time. It's more likely it was designed for the Stickmin series since it makes more sense coming from there, and was carried over to Among Us. Video game journalist Jeff Kiley for some reason gets a dedicated mask, and now the Airship map comes with a whole slew of dedicated Henry Stickmin references, on top of the many that there already were. Each of these is very directly linked to a specific character, so I'll simply list and compare those. Dave Pampa, Ellie Rose, Sven Svensson, Bert Curtis, Elry, the fusion between Henry and Ellie, Thomas Chestershire, if it's supposed to be like Worcestershire, Wizard, which was actually a usable item rather than a character, and something we would have seen littered on the ground in that Airship map. Frederick Munster, whose hat is made out of cheese, Mr. Macbeth, who himself is a reference to a Star Fox character. This is the hat Ellie wears during any route that ends with her as a Top At member. And this one of Henry's, with the little H, specifically comes from Top At Recruits, where he joins as a rank other than leader. Jeffrey Plum, and Right-Hand Man. There was also these other more generic hats added, ones that are less directly Henry Stickmin, although there's a chance the blonde ponytail is meant to be Dr. Vince Pinchelstein, and I guess in a silly way, every bald, non-hat wearing crewmate is wearing a Henry hat, especially if you chuck those eyebrows on. There are a handful of pets who can follow you around. Ellie and Henry appear yet again as possible pets to follow you. The Henry Stickmin pet cries when you get voted out or die in any other way. The bed crab is a play on Half-Life's head crabs, made copyright friendly by instead being a bedbug head crab type mashup. This was also seen during the crowbar fail of stealing the diamond in the retro room. Most things in that room had to be changed for the remaster to avoid copyright issues, and I always wondered how the head crabs managed to remain largely unchanged. I think the funny thing now is Innersloth could simply claim that that is an Among Us reference to bed crabs. No copyright there. We have the Futurama brain slugs yet again. The robot, a pretty obvious design reference to Pixar's WALL-E. The glitch pet, which is simply a floating Twitch company icon, and is the only one exclusive to PC. It is free, but must be claimed through specific events and Twitch inventory drops. Among Us has done a few themed events. During Christmas, there was simply lights all over the place. You could wear things like Santa hats and elf ears, but there were more jokes seen during the Halloween event. The maps were decorated with bats, slime, cobwebs, jack-o'-lanterns, but they play with that a bit, with a few locations having this misshapen, uncarved, green generic gourd. Nothing jack or lanterned about that. There's also this one that looks so familiar. What is this little horned beast? It reminds me of something I saw in Hive Swap, but I don't have a lot of confidence in that. I hope someone else can place it. Several rooms also had these silly ghosts that are meant to look like little sloths in bedsheets, indirectly referencing the Innersloth name and brand. And on April Fools, you could access it Deluxe, the Skeld with each word written backwards, and when you played it, the entire map would then be mirrored. Here's a little something extra that goes outside of the game itself. Innersloth first teased an early 2021 release date for the Airship map. A few days into January, people were losing their minds with release predictions and over-analyzing every little thing. The devs had to clarify, early is much more broad than simply the exact start of the year. This shared image on their social media is obviously a recreation of Charlie Kelly's conspiracy wall in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he tries to identify Pepe Silva. As was stated by the official Among Us account, literally have no idea where you get some of this info. Bone? Like the single bone seen in the crewmates? Fans speculating about their anatomy. That would have been blowing up around the same time people were doing the same thing for the Fall Guys. Some subliminal messaging to play Henry Stickmin, although, maybe not that subliminal. With the Switch leak, the map must already be fully done. Surely there's no bug fixing or testing or cleanup or extra art that needs to be implemented. Release it already. I just imagine they were sick of hearing that. Guesses about what early might entail. Maybe a particular range, as well as specific dates seemingly pulled out of thin air. A conspiracy that it won't release at all. Claims that the devs are lazy, or the bane of any artist's existence. The idea that simple-looking art is magically super quick to produce. Ooh, that makes my own blood boil. And the all-important but placed hilariously directly behind the conspiracy crewmate's own butt. What a gag. Just before the release date, they also dropped this "Here It Comes" meme. Gotta love a developer that creates their own marketing memes. Oh boy, that was a bit of a crunch to get done as quickly as I did, but I'm happy with the thoroughness of it. I hope this is comprehensive. People will have to let me know if I left anything out. I gotta think of what game I'm gonna go secret hunting for in next. We've done all of Henry, now Among Us. I guess I should carry on with my Undertale series. The world is our oyster. Thank you all so much for watching. Consider supporting the Patreon if you want to see your name in the credits here, and I hope to see you again soon.